Heartbroken and alone, she unexpectedly gave her first night to a stranger who was a CEO revealed. The cafe buzzed with soft conversations and the rich aroma of coffee, yet Lucy felt utterly alone. Just weeks before, she had sat here with Kevin, her boyfriend, discussing their shared future. Now she traced absent-minded loops in the margins of her notepad, overwhelmed by the silence left in his wake. Post-breakup, a fog had settled in her mind, smothering her ambition like a thick blanket. Despite her talent for unraveling complex scientific questions, surrounded by murmurs and laughter, she felt invisible, silly for even thinking she could achieve anything substantial. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lucy caught sight of a striking figure across the room. He was tall, with tousled hair and an easy smile that revealed an undeniable confidence. His presence drew her in, even as her heart raced with uncertainty. When he approached her table, the weight of her own insecurities threatened to swell. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting, pulling her from the depths of her self-doubt. The stranger introduced himself as Jake, a CEO visiting from Silicon Valley. Their conversation ignited like a flame in the growing dark, a welcomed distraction from the ache of loneliness that simmered beneath her skin. They spoke passionately about innovation, technology's future, and the importance of pursuing dreams, topics she had long shelved in favor of Kevin's aspirations. But just as hope began to flicker within her, Jake dropped a quiet bombshell. He was engaged. The revelation hit her like a cold gust of wind, leaving her dazed and questioning. Did he see her more than just a fleeting distraction? A rush of conflicting emotions surged within her, anger and desire twisting into a knot of anguish. Why was she feeling this way for a man who was on the brink of committing to someone else? Yet here he was, recognizing her brilliance, not the shadow of her former relationship. He proposed giving her a chance to present at a major conference, an opportunity that could redefine her path. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet as the intoxicating possibility of a new path loomed before her, she felt the heavy pressure of family expectations pressing down on her. The lingering voice of her mother echoed in her mind. Career stability over wild ambitions, loyalty over personal fulfillment. Here she stood, in a place where she could finally reclaim her fire, but it was entwined with a man whose life was already mapped out. The conflict twisted her stomach into knots. Was she ready to risk everything for a chance at something real? Her internal voice screamed for clarity as the cafe grew darker, shadows stretching across the floor, matching the weight in her heart. Would she plunge into the uncharted waters of ambition and chance, or sink back into the safe, suffocating water of familial loyalty? As Jake's eyes searched hers, an electric tension hung thickly in the air, leaving her breathless and longing for an answer she desperately feared to confront. The air felt dense with anticipation as Lucy locked eyes with Jake, the weight of their unspoken possibilities swirling around them. She could feel her heart pounding like a drum, an uncomfortable mix of fear and excitement raking through her consciousness. Was this moment a fleeting escape or a chance for real change? The cafe faded into the background, its clinking cups and murmured conversations becoming mere background noise against the symphony of her racing thoughts. "Lucy," she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, I don't know. I have always prioritized stability, and now, sometimes taking risks is the only way to break free.
Jake interrupted softly, the sincerity in his eyes stripping away her defenses. A virtual avalanche of thoughts cascaded through her mind. The months, possibly years she had spent treading water, staying loyal to Kevin's dreams rather than forging her own ahead. This new path, filled with unknowns and ambition, was calling her name. Yet the echo of her mother's voice loomed louder than ever. Stability first, personal dreams a distant second. For the first time in weeks, she felt the budding stirrings of her old ambition, a yearning to return to the tables of research, to explore scientific frontiers where her mind truly belonged. With a steadying breath, she realized that the pain of loneliness hadn't been the harshest part of her recent experiences. It had been the betrayal of her own aspirations. "Jake," her voice grew steadier, "I've been lost for a while, but that conference, it could be my chance to shine, a chance that I haven't carved out for myself in ages." As she spoke, her determination solidified. This moment was turning into much more than an enticing distraction. It transcended romantic entanglement. It was an opportunity for self-discovery. Jake smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting as if he could sense the shift within her. "Exactly. You're brilliant, Lucy. I don't just want to give you a platform. I want to see you embrace your potential. But you have to want it for yourself." He leaned further forward, his intensity captivating. "What do you truly envision for your life?" She felt the walls of her self-imposed constraints begin to crumble.
The visions floated before her, presenting at the conference, reclaiming her worth, standing tall amidst applause, and perhaps weaving it all into a narrative of her own success rather than someone else's. Each thought invigorated her spirit, igniting a flame she thought had long flickered out. But as fire brewed within her, doubt crept back in. What if she failed? What if her mother was right, and pursuing her own ambitions only led her further from family loyalty? "But what if I falter, Jake?" she finally confessed, her eyes darting around the room, seeking stability in the chaotic fervor of her mind. "That's the risk," he replied bluntly. Yet there was a kindness in his tone that grounded her. "But failure doesn't define you. It's a lesson, a stepping stone towards growth. You've already proven your brilliance in academia. Now it's time to showcase it to the world." He was right, the truth enveloping her like a blanket of clarity. But this decision, however beautiful, was still tethered to the relationships in her life she'd long deemed sacred. In that moment, determination warred with trepidation, and she found herself standing on the brink of a precipice called potential. "I need time," she finally breathed, the weight of her uncertainty still heavy in the air. "To think, to plan." Jake nodded, respect evident in his eyes. "Take the time you need, but don't take too long." With that, he stood to leave, the echo of his footsteps a reminder of the choices now laid before her. This wasn't just about a man or the fleeting magic of their encounter. It was about her resurgence, the reclamation of self. Yet the lingering shadows of commitment and family loyalty plagued her thoughts, drawing her back into uncertainty. Would she be brave enough to break free? As she sipped her coffee, the heat fading to lukewarm, Lucy understood she was at a crossroads. A decision loomed on the horizon, one that could shape her future significantly. Would she muster the courage to confront her fears and embrace the unknown, or would she cling to the familiarity of what she had always known? A decision was coming, and its weight loomed over her like a storm ready to break. The cafe's bustling energy slowly returned to Lucy as she processed the gravity of her exchange with Jake. She felt small against the weight of her aspirations rising within her, each deep inhale filled with a mix of hope and dread. Would she still be Lucy,
the reliable daughter, if she dared to chase her own dreams? The internal conflict played on repeat, trapping her in a cycle of what-ifs. As she left the cafe, her footsteps echoed on the pavement, each step a reminder of the path she had yet to define. She needed clarity, but feared what that clarity might demand of her. A part of her was exhilarated by the prospect of taking the reins of her life, yet a nagging sensation told her that the journey could break bonds she held dear.
Returning home, the familiar sight of her parents' framed photographs lining the walls greeted her like old friends. Each image captured moments of stability, graduations, family holidays, heartfelt smiles. They whispered a narrative of expectation and responsibility, a path paved for her that she had dutifully followed. The thought of embarking on her own journey felt like betrayal. Still, deep inside, a voice urged her to listen to the flame that flickered to life during her conversation with Jake. That evening, she sat at her writing desk, the blank page before her as daunting as the decisions that loomed. Rather than writing a scientific proposal or detailing the next steps of her career, which she felt a gravitational pull toward, she chose instead to contemplate the life she envisioned for herself. She drafted a letter addressed to her future self. It began with a simple question: what does being brave mean? This exercise brought an unsettling reality. Her personal goals were woven tightly with her fear of losing connection to her family. How could she honor her dreams without severing the roots of loyalty? As she wrestled with these thoughts, she turned to a core principle she once held true: the understanding that sacrifices would be necessary on the road to self-actualization. The path to breaking free wasn't just about shaking off the responsibilities of familial loyalty. It was about redefining what those loyalties meant to her. Her pen danced across the page, words flowing out like water from a quenched well, exploring her scientific passions, potential research ideas, and even the thrill of presenting those at a conference. Clarity began to crystallize, like dew on a crisp morning. She envisioned a future where she could integrate her love for science with her values, where her successes didn't eclipse her relationships, but enriched them, bringing pride instead of shame. When her thoughts finally quieted, Lucy's spirit felt lighter, as if she had taken a step onto solid ground. She closed her notebook, a tachometer of energy buzzing with newfound purpose. Yet, as ready as she was to ignite her academic pursuits, a voice in her mind warned her that she would face opposition: her mother, her own insecurities, perhaps even Kevin's expectations. But she realized Jake's words echoed within her. Failure is a lesson, a stepping stone towards growth. She grappled with every possible outcome, but each time she envisioned herself faltering, she also saw the strength that emerged from each struggle. As she brushed her fingers against the pages of her notebook, a sudden thought surged through her. Could she put herself forward into the world without losing herself in the process? What would her mother think? More importantly, what would she think of herself? With the dawn of this new awareness, the foundation was laid for her journey. It was a delicate balance between daring to venture out on her own while ensuring she didn't forget the voices of love that had shaped her. For the first time in many months, Lucy saw not just the precipice of potential, but the vibrant horizon waiting to be painted by her ambitions. She would take Jake's challenge to heart, but the next steps needed careful strategy, a way to weave her aspirations into her identity without losing what she cherished. And then, like a bolt of lightning, a clear vision struck her. The first step would be the conference, but it would require her to confront the very person who had long dictated the course of her life. A storm of feeling cascaded through her as she reached for her phone, her heart racing as she contemplated the call that might change everything. Would she summon the courage to share her ambitions with her family, risking a confrontation rather than staying in the shadows? Or would she retreat once more into the safety of the familiar? The decision loomed large, demanding her attention and her resolve. Lucy's fingers hovered over the phone, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She took a deep breath, steadying herself against the overwhelming tide of anxiety. Memories flooded her mind, her mother's unwavering support, her father's quiet encouragement. Each image sparked a flicker of guilt. How could she unravel their dreams for her by chasing her own? But Jake's voice echoed in her ears, a steady reminder of what could lie beyond fear. "You have to be brave," he had said. "What's life if you don't take risks?" With every passing second, the words felt more like a challenge and less like a consolation. Each inhale filled her with purpose, and she swiftly dialed her mother's number, anticipation and dread intertwining like vines around her apprehension. The line rang with an agonizing slowness, stretching time itself until her mother finally answered, and the familiarity of her voice anchored Lucy, yet cast an even deeper shadow over her intent. "Hi, sweetheart," her mother chirped, a warmth spilling through the phone that momentarily assuaged Lucy's anxiety. "Mom," she began, her voice wavering, "I need to talk to you about something important." The gravity of her feelings swelled like a tidal wave, threatening to engulf her if she didn't push through. "What is it, dear?" There was a faint anticipation in her mother's voice that prompted Lucy to dive deeper, the very air around her shifting as she steered the conversation toward the pivotal moment. "I want to apply to present at a scientific conference," Lucy stated, the words leaving her mouth with almost explosive force. They hung in the air, a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the other end. "What? You've really given this some thought?" Her tone transformed from cautious interest to outright approval. Lucy caught the hitch in her voice, the familiar notes of disappointment creeping in. The instant doubt swirled within her. Would this push them apart, or was it the first step toward redefining their relationship? "Yes, Mom, I have." Lucy's voice firmed, fighting against her yearning for approval. "I believe this has the potential to be an important turning point for me. It's something I need to do." The silence that followed felt like an eternity, stretching into an uncomfortable void where Lucy's heart sank. "Well, Lucy," her mother finally replied, each word laced with trepidation, "you know your father and I have always expected you to follow a stable path. Are you sure this isn't just a phase?" The question hung heavy, and Lucy's heart tightened. Stable? Was that the right word for her dreams? All those years of adhering to others' expectations felt like shackles tightening around her ambitions. "Mom, this isn't a whim. It's my career, and I need to explore it on my own terms," she argued, feeling a surge of determination. But the undercurrent of conflict surged as her mother's expectations loomed like an impenetrable barrier. "But what about your responsibilities at home?" The uncertainty in her mother's voice darkened the air, gripping Lucy with an iron fist. "By pursuing this, I'm not abandoning my responsibilities. I want you to be proud of me, Mom. I don't want to just be your daughter who—" She caught herself, realizing that admitting fear would only deepen the chasm forming between her aspirations and family loyalty. A pause swallowed the conversation again, and Lucy took the opportunity to reconsider. Perhaps it was time to share her vision more clearly. She realized this wasn't just about a conference. It was about courage, about the commitment to herself. "Listen, I want to incorporate science and my passions to contribute in meaningful ways. I want to be the person you can be proud of, but right now, that means taking chances." The tremor in her mother's response was palpable.
"Lucy, we only want what's best for you. I'm discovering what that means for me. Please, just trust me on this," she pleaded, vulnerability seeping into her tone. "Trust?" Her mother hesitated, the word lingering. "Do you really know what you want?" Maybe she didn't know completely yet, but Lucy felt the stirrings of destiny tugging at her like a persistent tide. "I'm finding my way, and I want you to be part of this journey." She halted, realizing the depth of her courage mingled with the reality of potential fractures in their relationship. The conversation ended without resolution, yet Lucy emerged from it not unscathed, but emboldened. She had confronted the person whose expectations loomed largest in her psyche. The fissures between them were exposed, but she had also claimed a piece of her autonomy. As she hung up, a new determination crackled within her. She wondered just how far this newfound courage could take her.
With the conference looming ahead, she would need to adopt a strategy that balanced pushing forth her ambitions while managing the tensions at home. Her heart raced as an image crystallized in her mind. She would not only present a paper, but also define her role within her family and her future. Lucy sat down, resolved to put pen to paper once more. This time, she would map out not only her research ideas, but the steps she needed to take to establish her presence in both arenas. Could this conference be the turning point? A revelation that would hurt, yet ultimately lead to harmony? The call had been a first step, but it left her teetering at a new precipice, one that beckoned her toward both growth and confrontation. How would she prepare to face not only the scrutiny of science, but the scrutiny of her family? The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting muted patterns across Lucy's desk, yet it felt far from warm. She stared blankly at the scattered notes and textbooks, the chaos reflecting the storm churning inside her. The paper needed refining, but her mind kept drifting to the conversation with her mother, the uncertainty still echoing around her thoughts, a relentless refrain. With a deep sigh, Lucy cleared her desk, mentally preparing for the arduous task ahead. A part of her craved clarity, an echo of the confidence she had felt when she initially made the decision to pursue this chance. She had taken step, but now she had to follow through, channeling her emotions into actionable ideas. It was time to draft not just a paper, but a manifesto for herself. She turned to her computer, fingers hovering above the keyboard. The blinking cursor danced impatiently, taunting her hesitation. Taking a steadying breath, she forced herself to focus. What were the core ideas that ignited her passion? What was her unique perspective? The words began to flow reluctantly. "The intersection of personal experience and scientific inquiry is where true innovation lies," she typed, feeling a spark of resolve ignite within her. She shaped her vision around that concept, allowing herself to explore her motivations for presenting at the conference. It wasn't just about the research, it was about sharing her journey, weaving her narrative with empirical knowledge. As she crafted the first draft, the room filled with an electrifying energy. Each sentence she wrote pulled her further from doubt and closer to conviction. She felt a quiet elation building, the kind that surged from moments of clarity and purpose. Then, as she fine-tuned an argument, her phone buzzed, disrupting her burgeoning focus. It was Jake. She almost hesitated, worried that connecting with him might pull her back into the uncertain realm of her family dynamics. But Jake's encouragement had served as a lifeline before. Perhaps it was time to engage with that perspective again. "Hey," he answered, his voice light and familiar. "How's the paper coming along?"
"Better," she admitted, her confidence lifting as they spoke. "I finally started to shape my ideas, and it feels right." "Good. What's your angle?" The curiosity in his tone sparked her enthusiasm further, and she unspooled her thoughts, articulating the themes of her work, her aspirations, and the blend of science with her personal journey. "You've got a powerful message," Jake responded, his approval filling her with warmth. "You need to own that. People will connect with your story." Lucy felt a rush of determination wash over her. "If I can just communicate that effectively," she trailed off, sensing new possibilities opening before her. Her struggle wasn't just personal, it was emblematic of the pressures many faced between dreams and obligations. "Let's brainstorm a bit more," Jake suggested, and they dove deeper into her concepts, sharpening her arguments together, illuminating ideas she hadn't fully explored alone. But as their conversation wound down, a solid question punctuated the air. "What's your next step with your family?" he asked, reminding her of the looming specter of the expectations she'd challenged. Lucy faltered, the edge of doubt creeping back in. "I don't know. I'll need to clarify what I want, and then—" She paused, realizing the stark truth of her situation. "And then I'll have to confront them again." Confrontation doesn't have to be a battle. It can be a conversation, one where you lay down the groundwork for what this all means to you. He was right. It wasn't just about presenting at the conference. It was about sharing who she was becoming, not just who her parents wanted her to be. Her resolve solidified further as she hung up, emboldened. She would manage the tensions at home, and through her journey at the conference, redefine what success meant, not just for her, but for her relationship with her family. Yet within her, the anxiety didn't completely dissipate. It crystallized into a new directive. How would she navigate her family's expectations without losing herself? The path ahead was murky, the confrontation with her mother inevitable, but for the first time, the prospect of that conversation seemed less daunting, akin to preparing for her presentation, a challenge she was willing to embrace. The countdown was on, not just for the conference, but for the pivotal family meeting that loomed like a shadow on her horizon. Would her courage be enough to bridge the gap? The day had arrived with a composed clarity that Lucy did not anticipate. The conference loomed ahead, but it was the impending conversation with her mother that preoccupied her thoughts. Taking a moment to breathe in the fresh air from the open window, she reminded herself that today could be the turning point she had long sought in her life. Before heading out to the conference venue, Lucy sat in front of her mirror, practicing her presentation.
Each practiced word felt like a tiny rebellion against the expectations that stifled her spirit. "Personal journeys fuel academic inquiry," she articulated, watching her reflection scrutinize the passion igniting her face. The fear of confronting her family was still woven into her, almost like an old friend she had yet to break ties with. Yet a new undertone of hope fluttered quietly beneath her uncertainty. After several run-throughs, she finally donned her presentation attire, a charcoal gray blazer paired with a white blouse. The clothing felt symbolic, armor crafted for both professional credibility and the emotional armor she needed. She studied herself in the mirror once more, an unyielding resolve surfacing in her heart. Today, she would share her truth. Arriving at the conference, the atmosphere buzzed with a potent mix of anticipation and anxiety. The vibrancy of intellect cracked open new pathways of possibility. Other attendees buzzed about their topics passionately. Lucy felt a flicker of kinship with these strangers, kindred spirits navigating the turmoil of ideas and identities. As she prepared to present, she reflected on her earlier thoughts. This presentation was not merely for those attending the conference. It existed to plant the seeds of change in herself and her familial relationships. If she could articulate her journey clearly today, perhaps the cracks in her family dynamics could begin to mend in time. The time came, and Lucy stepped onto the stage. The spotlight felt equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. "Thank you for this opportunity," she began, steadying her voice.
As she articulated her insights, the words flowed with an ease she had not anticipated. The intersection of her personal struggles with her academic pursuit resonated powerfully with the audience. Head nods and murmurs of understanding encouraged her to delve deeper, sharing her evolving identity beyond the confines of familial expectation. Post-presentation, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, each interaction sparking a new thread of confidence within her. She was engaging, authentic, an embodiment of the very ideas she advocated for. Yet amid the buzz of applause and congratulations, her mother's voice echoed in her mind, spurring doubt. Once settled back at her hotel, the afterglow of the presentation still lingering in her veins, she prepared for her call with her mother. The mere thought of it ignited a pit in her stomach. It was time to wrestle with the question that had haunted her. How would she meet her mother's expectations without compromising her newfound clarity? The phone call began. Lucy's heart pounded as her mother's familiar voice crackled through the line. "I heard you did well today," her mother said, but Lucy sensed the underlying current of skepticism. "I did, actually."
"I spoke about how my experiences shape my research," Lucy replied, her voice steady, despite the tremors of anxiety lurking beneath. There was a pause on the other end, potentially a moment for consideration or a prelude to dismissal. "You always focus so much on your personal story. Isn't that a distraction from the real work?" her mother challenged. Lucy felt her pulse quicken, each heartbeat echoing the lessons of the day. This was her moment. She needed to bring forth the truth she had declared on stage. She took a deep breath. "Mom, I think my personal experiences give depth to my work. They're inseparable. I want you to understand that." The conversation began to shift, the air thick with tension and possibility. Lucy felt like she was walking a tightrope, yet for the first time she moved with purpose and clarity, buoyed by the strength of her convictions. As they navigated through the conversation, a crack formed in the long-standing wall between them. When the call ended, Lucy's heart raced, a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration washing over her. She had not only presented her research with clarity, but had begun to unveil the layers of misunderstanding with her mother. An unfamiliar but exhilarating sense of power surged through her. Yet in that moment of triumph, a startling realization struck her. She had taken a significant step, but what awaited her next? Lifting her gaze to the scattered reminders of her ambitions, she pondered the crucial decision that lingered. What would happen if she fully embraced not just her academic path, but also everything that came with her pursuit of autonomy? The stakes were rising, and a new challenge was awakening within her. This journey was only beginning, and just as she had stood in front of a crowd today, she sensed more confrontations ahead, ones that would truly test her resilience and commitment to become who she was meant to be. The morning sun poured through the hotel window, illuminating the remnants of last night's triumph. Lucy sat at the small wooden desk, replaying the phone call with her mother in her mind, each word like an echo of newfound strength. The pivotal moment where she had dared to voice her truth reverberated with her. Yet beneath the surface of this victory was a burgeoning anxiety. Had she truly made her point, or had she merely stirred the waters of conflict? Determined to channel her apprehension, she grabbed her laptop and began drafting ideas for her next academic paper. A piece she had long intended to write about the intersection of personal narratives and scholarly work. The words spilled out furiously, each keystroke reinforcing the notion that her voice mattered. As Lucy immersed herself in the craft of writing, the thrill of self-discovery bubbled within her, pushing her past the tight constraints of self-doubt. Despite the surge of productivity, she couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. The celebration of her success felt muted in the wake of her mother's lingering critiques. Could she ever bridge the gap between her individual journey and her family's expectations? Each thought sent a ripple of frustration through her. That frustration crystallized into clarity.
She needed more than just her own validation. She craved understanding from her family. With a resolve ignited by this realization, she decided to schedule a meeting with a mentor back home, someone who could provide guidance and perhaps insight into facing familial tensions. Later that day, Lucy stood before the mirror again, examining her reflection. She donned a lighter blazer this time, a pastoral blue, a testament to her emerging confidence. As she stepped into the bustling cafe where her mentor had suggested they meet, the warmth of the atmosphere wrapped around her, a comforting counterpoint to her internal struggles. The familiar face of Dr. Adams greeted her with a warm smile. They settled into a quiet corner, and as they talked, Lucy began to lay bare her challenges. Dr. Adams listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. The academic world can be isolating, but don't underestimate the power of sharing your narrative, he encouraged. Those experiences are what connect us to our audience and to our families. Lucy felt a surge of curiosity prompting her to ask, but what if sharing those stories only alienates them even more? Dr. Adams leaned in, sighing thoughtfully. Sometimes vulnerability can be an act of bravery. It can draw people closer if you let them see the real you, but it depends on how you frame it. As the conversation continued, Lucy began to realize the importance of balance. It was crucial not only to express her journey, but empathically to acknowledge her family's perspectives. Each insight from Dr. Adams wrapped around her like a nurturing embrace, illuminating paths she hadn't considered before. When they parted, Lucy felt an invigorating mix of energy and determination. She would need a strategy to navigate her next conversation with her mother. How could she articulate her experiences in a way that invited understanding rather than conflict? This was the challenge that loomed ahead, confronting not just her mother's skepticism, but also the fear that had shackled her for far too long. Back at her hotel, her fingers flew across the keys again, weaving her newly formed strategies into the outline of her paper. Clarifying her intentions was becoming not just an academic endeavor, but also a personal mission to reclaim her narrative. As the night deepened, she leaned back, staring at the words on the screen. The stakes were higher than ever. This was not merely an academic pursuit. It was about confronting a lifetime of expectations and forging a new reality, one rooted in authenticity. But before she could navigate this delicate web of familial dynamics, she felt the stirrings of something unexpected.
A realization flickered in her mind, a new idea for how to connect with her family. Letters. Written expressions of vulnerability could serve as a bridge. With a sigh of determination, Lucy opened a fresh document, her heart racing with possibility. What would her first letter say? It's time to find out. The first strokes of her pen felt heavy with the weight of expectation. Lucy opened her document, staring at the blank page as if it were a mirror reflecting her innermost fears. The thought of writing letters filled her with excitement, but also trepidation. How would she strip away the facades, crafting words that laid bare her vulnerabilities without provoking her mother's defensiveness? Rather than diving straight into the substance, she began with a loose outline of her feelings, an emotional roadmap. She questioned herself repeatedly. What did she truly want to say? How would she articulate the complexities of her experience, the joy of her achievements intertwined with the shadows of her family's disapproval? Recalling Dr. Adams' advice, her fingers hesitated over the keyboard, sparking a moment of reflection. It was evident that her experience was valuable, but it was also entwined with her family's narrative. If she wanted to foster real understanding, her words would need to balance self-expression with empathy. As this thought took hold, she made a conscious choice
to approach her writing with a spirit of inclusivity. She envisioned her mother not as an opponent, but as a fellow traveler on this convoluted path of life. After a few moments, Lucy began with the simple yet profound declaration, "Dear Mom, I hope this letter finds you well." The phrase felt familiar and offered a comfort she hadn't anticipated. It eased her into the deeper layers of vulnerability she needed to unpack. She continued, explaining her journey in academic circles, the passion that ignited her writing. However, as she wrote about her triumphs, Lucy also acknowledged the weight of her mother's expectations. She made it clear she was not aiming to provoke, just to share. The shadow of misunderstanding loomed large between them. As she articulated her struggles, her heart raced. The stakes felt immense. Each word was a step onto fragile terrain. With meticulous care, she laid bare her fears of inadequacy, her desire for connection, her hopes for a more profound relationship with her mother. She felt exposed, yet empowered. Hours blurred together as the sun dipped lower in the sky, her coffee long cold beside her. The clarity she sought emerged from the chaos of her emotions, revealing the crux of her message. "I want to understand you too, Mom." The letter echoed her objective, encapsulating the heart of her internal conflict and her longing for unity. Suddenly, the nagging anxiety trickled back in. Was this too much? Would her mother be overwhelmed? What if, despite her best intentions, this letter pushed them further apart?
The possibility loomed like a specter, a reminder of failed conversations past. Lucy paused, tapping the pen against her cheek, swirling in that moment of heated vulnerability. Did she have what it took to follow through with this? Her heart beat in a chaotic rhythm, urging her forward, yet fear shackled her momentum. The thrill of self-expression battled against a tide of dread. She had made significant strides in understanding herself, yet could she articulate that with the same grace to her mother? The clock ticked ominously in the backdrop as she grappled with these thoughts. Yet, with a resolve forming anew, she returned to her letter, deciding she would send it regardless of the outcome. Each word was a piece of her initiation into a new chapter, one that held the potential for reconciliation and growth. As she typed the closing, a feeling of bravado surfaced within her despite the knot in her stomach. What awaited her on the other side of those words? Would understanding bloom, or would the tension strangle the moment? She was at the edge of an emotional precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. With a final deep breath, she pressed send, surrendering the words to a fate she could only begin to fathom. But as the screen faded to black, a new thought she hadn't anticipated took root. A desperate desire to confront those fears head-on. Would it be enough to simply write a letter? A fresh idea unfurled before her, a plan to meet her mother's gaze face to face. The time had come to face her fears. In the days that followed sending the letter, Lucy found herself in a suspended state of anticipation. Each morning the sun lit up her room, but her thoughts remained at dusk, clouded by uncertainty. She moved through her daily routine on autopilot, her mind caught in a whirlwind of possibilities, imagining her mother's reactions ranging from anger to acceptance, confusion to clarity. At work, her colleagues noticed her distraction. They approached her desk, offering invites to lunch, but conversations seemed to flutter away like autumn leaves, weightless and fleeting. The novels she typically devoured felt heavy in her hands, each page a reminder of her emotional upheaval. "Lucy, you okay?" Priya, her closest co-worker, asked one afternoon, as Lucy stared blankly at her computer. "You seem distant." The question ricocheted within her. Was she okay? A stranger in her own skin, she half-heartedly waved it away. "Just a lot on my mind. I'll be fine."
But fine wasn't the goal. Deep down, she craved something more, an authenticity that would fill the hollowness left behind by unanswered questions. Dr. Adams' voice echoed in her head. Personal growth arises from facing fears, not dodging them. Perhaps she could embody that lesson. The next step crystallized as she began sketching out what a face-to-face meeting with her mother might look like.
Exploring locations, a familiar cafe from childhood, or perhaps a neutral ground like the park where they once strolled. Each option felt like a double-edged sword. They held comfort, but also the weight of nostalgia tied with complicated memories. Lucy took a deep breath, allowing courage to swell within her. This wasn't just about avoidance anymore. It was about confrontation, an opportunity to create a dialogue instead of a monologue. The idea ignited a spark within her. She needed to act, to gather the strength to initiate change. She took out her journal, the pages well-worn and speckled with her thoughts, dreams, and even her rawest drafts of emotions. Writing about the meeting crystallized not only her intentions, but also her fears. How would she start the conversation? What if it spiraled into old arguments? With fierce determination, Lucy forced herself to envision a new narrative, one that allowed for mistakes, misunderstandings, and the potential for growth. Hours trickled away as she filled pages with her fears and strategies, gathering resolve through articulation. "What is the worst that could happen?" she wrote. "Could it be worse than silence?" Pausing, she reflected on the implications. Silence had become a chasm between them, and now she was willing to bridge it, regardless of the current. When she finally arrived home that evening, the air felt electric against her skin. The city pulsed with an undercurrent of possibility as she navigated through crowded streets, mingling with people who appeared unaffected by her turmoil. She reached out to her mother, suggesting they meet at the cafe in the heart of the city, a spot laden with significance from their past. As she hit send on the message inviting her mother, a wave of adrenaline surged through her. This wasn't just an invitation, it was a declaration of her intent to show up, not only for herself, but for their relationship. The clock ticked incessantly as she focused her thoughts on what lay ahead. What would she say? How would her mother react? Could she convey the complexities of her heart without diluting her message? Each question sent shivers down her spine, layered with the thrill of potential transformation. Yet, as the waiting game began, a nagging voice whispered, "What if she says no? What if Lucy's courage met a wall of rejection?" The anticipation of the outcome grit her resolve, a stark reminder that personal growth demanded vulnerability. In that turbulent moment, she recognized the parallels to her writing. Every draft carried the wherewithal to break and rebuild. The world outside blurred into a haze as she embraced the uncertainty, ready to dive headfirst into that emotional ocean. One thought surged to the surface as she prepared for the encounter. What would it mean to face her mother, not just for reconciliation, but for her own self-discovery? As the night stretched on, Lucy steeled herself for what awaited on the other side of the cafe's door. But even as her heart raced with potential, she wondered, would courage be enough to confront a past that still haunted her? The cafe on the corner of Maple and 3rd felt alive, the warmth of the wood and the aroma of fresh pastries wrapping around Lucy like a familiar embrace. As she entered, her heart raced, a mix of excitement and overwhelming dread coursing through her veins. She had agreed to meet her mother here, a step toward healing she felt compelled to take, even amidst the uncertainty. Seated at a cozy table by the window, Lucy fidgeted with her necklace, replaying the words from her letter in her mind. She had poured her thoughts onto those pages, attempting to bridge the chasm that had grown between them. Yet now, confronted by the reality of their upcoming conversation, she felt her resolve waver. In the distance, she spotted her mother approaching,
a familiar silhouette accentuated by the autumn leaves swirling around her. Lucy's breath caught. Would the discussions about paths not taken transform into a dialogue of understanding, or would it all come crashing down, buried under the weight of expectation? "Lucy," her mother greeted her with a smile that masked the tension inherent in their reunion. Settling into the chair, she glanced around. "It's nice to be here, isn't it?" "It is," Lucy replied, summoning the courage that had eluded her minutes earlier. "I really wanted to talk." The words hung in the air like a fragile ornament, ready to shatter at the slightest breath. Her mother nodded with a hint of understanding, but Lucy could see the flicker of apprehension in her eyes. "I read your letter," her mother began cautiously, allowing silence to stretch almost unbearably. "You had a lot of feelings." "I did," affirmed Lucy. "I wanted you to know what's been going on inside my mind. I've felt trapped between what you and Dad want for me and what I want for myself." A silence followed, this one less tense and more contemplative. Her mother's face softened, the lines of worry beginning to fade. "I just want you to have security, sweetheart." "I know, and I appreciate that more than you realize," Lucy interjected gently, sensing the pivotal moment within grasp. "But pursuing my dreams doesn't mean I'm abandoning you or Dad. It means I need to carve out a space for my own identity, too." Her mother's eyes brimmed with an emotion Lucy couldn't quite decipher. Was it fear, pride, or a cocktail of both? "It's just so different from what we envisioned for you. You were always the reliable one, Lucy, the one with stability in her sights." "Stable is not what I want anymore," she heard herself say, a surge of resolve igniting within. "I want my ambitions to thrive, intertwined with who I am. I want to present at that conference, to be proud of what I can accomplish." A moment hung delicately between them, pulsating with vulnerability. "What if it doesn't go well? What if you struggle?"
her mother questioned, her voice laced with concern. "Then I'll learn from it," Lucy replied, her tone steady. "Failure isn't the end. It's a part of the journey. It teaches resilience, prepares me for challenges ahead." The corners of her mother's mouth lifted, a reluctant smile breaking through. "I always wanted you to aim high, just not too high. I worry you'll get hurt." "I need to risk it to know my worth," Lucy asserted, grounding her voice in raw firmness. "I can't define my life through other people's expectations any longer. I want to make my own choices while still being the daughter you're proud of." The silence that followed felt rich with unspoken truths, each second drawing them closer. Her mother's gaze dropped to her hands, then back to Lucy, the unfamiliar softness of understanding blooming. "What can I do to support you?" she finally whispered, a genuine inquiry shattering the barriers built over years. Lucy felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Just being here for me is a huge step. I want us to share this journey, to explore it together. It'll take time, but I hope we can redefine what family means." "Perhaps I can help with ideas for your research?" her mother probed, a tentative smile emerging. "Absolutely, I would love that," Lucy replied, igniting the flickers of hope into a warm flame of connection. In that coffee haven, as the conversation unfolded, walls crumbled slowly, yet resolutely, one truth at a time. Lucy felt empowered, no longer the good daughter existing in someone else's story, but an emerging author of her life, rekindling her passions while still holding space for family. As they continued to share ideas and concerns, Lucy recognized that a malleable path lay ahead, a dual journey to accomplish her goals and navigate her family's expectations. She could achieve both, redefining not just her own identity, but also widening the understanding within her family. When their meeting came to an end, Lucy stepped out of the cafe, light spilling forth like the morning sun. She had entered a storm of uncertainty, yet emerged with clarity, confidence, and a deep-seated realization of her worth. The call to embrace her journey had transcended mere ambition. It was now an opportunity for connection, understanding, and growth. This was her moment, her personal revolution. Don't wait even one more second to share this journey with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their struggles. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.